congressman has decided to basically voice the concerns or non-concerns of the country's poor by assuming that they don't really care about health insurance. They don't really want health insurance. Now, during a recent press conference, he was asked about the issue of Medicaid. And when he was answering the question, here's what he said. Just like Jesus said, the poor will always be with us. There is a group of people that just don't want health care and aren't going to take care of themselves. Now, who would be dumb enough to say that? Representative Roger Marshall, he's actually a brand new congressman. He got elected in November, and he is part of or a member of the GOP Doctors Caucus.
Yeah.
Anyway, he says more, but we'll get to that in a second.
All right, there's two parts of that are unbelievable. So who could possibly believe that, guys? Really, even if you're a right winger, you think poor people don't want health care? Like, and so that what, they could die?
Their kids could get sick and die?
I mean, what, yeah, come on, guys. Okay, now look, if he were to say something like bring that down 80% and say something like, hey, I wish some folks would take better care of themselves. Unfortunately, people that are in a bad socioeconomic status don't come in for checkups nearly as much as they need to. You could say, hey, maybe that's a stereotype, but nobody's going crazy over that comment, right? Okay, I get it, and I wish some people took care of themselves. But to say that they don't want health care is nuts. What if they get cancer? No, I'm poor, I don't want health care. Like, I like dying. My kid, people, it's like when their view of the poor is bums, right? Like, oh, they're just bums, and they're living off of us. No, people making $28,000 a year have a real job, right? And they're poor, and if their kids get cancer, yes, they want health care. They want health care.
Joe Sandberg from aspiration.com was on the show. We did a financial show with him this week, Cenk, you and I did. 75% of the country cannot handle a $700 financial shock.
Right.
$700. So you think they're not trying? They're doing everything they can, and they're terrified that they're going to have to pay $1,000 deductible. So yeah, so maybe they don't go.
Yeah, I think that some of the comments that he said later kind of highlight what you mentioned, Cenk. Like, they think of poor people as bums. They think of poor people as individuals who have no interest in taking care of themselves, right? So let me give you those comments because I think they're important. He says, morally, spiritually, socially, the poor, including the homeless, just don't want health care.
Sure.
The Medicaid.
Wait, can I just say, what does that mean?
What does that even mean, right?
How does someone morally not want health care? Like, oh, I got a heart attack, but spiritually I'm not interested in healthcare.
Did you quote, and I'm sorry, Anna, but I was making the note, but did you quote the exact beginning of his quote where he says, just like Jesus said?
Yeah, I did.
Because first of all, there's no relation to what comes after. It's just a way of saying, I have to pretend I'm Christian, so I'm going to say the word Jesus, and then I'm going to tell you how horrible the poor are.
I actually think it's a little bit worse than that.
Please.
Because he said, just like Jesus said, the poor will always be with us. That's a way of saying, like, they're always going to be with us. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. Right? No, Jesus said the opposite, that you should spend all of your time taking care of the poor.
Right.
Jesus didn't say the poor are always going to be with us, so let's not give them health care.
Maybe he stopped reading after the poor are always going to be with us.
We should highlight Jesus's words in red and then his in black because there's no context, right? And I think the issue always with conservatives is that their legislation is always accompanied by some kind of moral judgment, right? This idea that poverty is a choice, which is not true, and it totally obscures the ways in which they've contributed to poverty through their policies. So I think this whole thing is flawed, and let's leave Jesus out of it.
Yeah, and later on he clarified that comment.
I think his clarification is worse.
Bad,
right, but let me just finally get to the part that I think is the most relevant. Okay, right. He says the Medicaid population, which is on a free credit card as a group, do probably the least preventative medicine and taking care of themselves and eating healthy and exercising. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying socially, that's where they are. Okay, so I want to stop there because I think that is so indicative of what right-wingers think of the poor. Like, they're lazy, they're slobs, they don't take care of themselves, they don't diet, they don't exercise, they don't do this, they don't do that. And so, first of all, that is a gross generalization, right? To assume they don't want preventative care. A lot of people don't get the preventative preventative care that they need because they literally cannot afford it. Just going to a doctor for an annual checkup if you do not have health insurance is a very costly thing to do. And so, yeah, a lot of people in this country are unhealthy, don't get the preventative care that they need, not because they don't want preventative care, but because they simply don't have access to it. To assume that they're all lazy bums who don't want to eat healthy and they don't want to live, better lives is absolutely ridiculous. And it just shows the disdain that people like him have for the disadvantaged.
So I think his clarifications are again worse. So first they're like, hey, I mean, you took Medicaid patients, and he's like, yeah, no, I did. He's like, patients would drive over 100 miles to see me because we're in Kansas.
Because they didn't care about taking care of themselves, they drove 100 miles.
Yeah, I thought they spiritually didn't mind not having health care. Instead, it turns out they drove 100 miles to see you.
Sure.
You want to go take care of this cold, or you want to just sit on the couch, eat a bunch of Cheetos?
And visiting the doctor is a hardship for poor people, right? It takes time that they often don't have from work, and sometimes the access of transportation to get preventative care it's taxing, and it's easier if you live a privileged life and you have the time and the space
and the gas
and the access, to get to the doctor.
You just brought up such an important point, and this is an ongoing thing that we complain about during our production meetings, because oftentimes there's at least one person missing from a production meeting because you have to book appointments with your doctor during the work week, during the hours of 9 to 5 when everyone's working, right? And so we're privileged because we're able to take that time off or take that time away to do our appointments with the doctor and then come back to work. But most people, especially those who are working part-time jobs or minimum wage jobs, don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and so I want to go back to Jesus for a second, because and look, so much of this is absurd. And don't get me wrong, I'm not over romanticizing the poor. Are there guys who are poor who don't go to the doctor enough and do preventative care, even though some of them have access to it? Sure, of course. But there are also people who are middle class and rich that do that.
Yeah, I mean,
So and the guy and this Marshall character says, these poor, they don't take care of themselves until their arms are chopped off or they got pneumonia and then they go to the ER. No, if they have cancer, they would they can't go to the ER. They would like to regularly get treatment. They don't want to just I'll just die. Go ahead, Marshall. You're better than me. Let me just die, right?
You know what the ER is for? If somehow your arm gets chopped off, you go to the ER. That's what it's for. I don't know.
And if it's a guy that he somehow associates with a rich guy, a white guy, oh my God, your arm was chopped off. Let's get you to the ER. He sees a poor guy with his arm chopped off. There he goes.
He waited. He chose to get his arm.
That arm was probably halfway cut off last week. He didn't do anything.
Why didn't you come in?
I would put my privileged laziness against any poor person's. I really would. Can we get graphic one ready again? I just want to, because that's of the guy. Because I think it's time for a little Ben Mankiewicz seemingly trivial but secretly spot on analysis.
You should do a segment, a branded segment.
Don't trust anyone who puts their own name on their golf shirt.
Oh my God.
It's a good lesson. It'll serve you well as you go through life. This has been a seemingly trivial but spot on piece of analysis from Ben Mankiewicz.
Well, that's preventative care of his, of his attire. Like he just wants to make sure he never loses it. Preventative care.
Yeah, he never has to wear goes to a party, doesn't have to put on a tag.
He doesn't go to parties.
Okay, and now I return to Jesus. So he said, in order to try to clarify the Jesus comment, he said, when I said the poor will always be with us, it was actually in the context of supporting the obligation we have to always take care of people, because we cannot completely craft a larger affordable healthcare policy around a comparatively small segment of the population who will get care no matter what. In other words, look, it's in the context of no, of course we have an obligation to the poor, but what are we gonna do, craft healthcare around them? No, I mean, we don't have that much of an obligation. No, we're gonna leave them out in the cold and they're gonna get to go to the ER right before they die. So I think Jesus is on my side. I think I've proven my case here. They claim that they're religious people. No. They claim that they believe in family values. They claim they've read the Bible.
I don't know much about Jesus, but I do know that he would wear a golf shirt that said on it, Jesus. Yeah.
And if you were unclear, Jesus of Nazareth.
Just.
Okay, FYI, not one of those poser Jesuses.
We already hired one investigative reporting team thanks to you guys. Let's hire the second right now. Go to tytnetwork.com/go.